New World had their open beta this weekend and I managed to jump on for a few hours to try it out. I've been watching this game for a long time but sort of lost track of it in recent months with so much going on. So I headed into the game with very outdated information and I wasn't really sure what to expect, and I have to say, it didn't go at all how I expected. This video will showcase my gameplay as I share some of my experiences and first impressions of the game. With all of that stuff out of the way, let's get into it. The opening cutscene ends with you shipwrecked on the supernatural island of Eternum. We get to design a character. It's fairly basic, male or female with some preset options to look through. There are a few options but nothing spectacular. I will say that there is a nice selection of more realistic looking people than in some games. For those that don't know, you don't choose a class in New World unlike a lot of other MMOs, and instead you customize your character by using different weapons. You can have 2 different weapons at a time, and each is individually leveled outside your character level by means of mastery points, and you get these by using the weapon. The more you use the weapon, the more mastery points you get, and then these mastery points can be spent on different skills and passive perks to further customize your character, along with the more standard attribute points you get to spend on stats that you get from leveling up. I really enjoy this system, and I'm a big fan of custom builds. It isn't a perfect system by any means, and I do think that some weapons are a little unbalanced at the moment. This could have been due to my inexperience with the game, but I'm not entirely sure this is the case. More on that in a bit. The world design feels very supernatural. It's very magical and fantastical, and I really love it. I love lush foliage in games, and this has it in heaps. Plants of different colours and sizes are everywhere and really give the world an added depth and mysterious feel. Most of the foliage can be harvested in one way or another too, which is nice to see and makes the world feel very interactive. Of course, some basic texture plants and grass can't be, but most other stuff can. While we're talking about harvesting, I have to say that the crafting system in New World is extensive, and I think for the first time ever for me, it also feels accessible. More often than not in MMOs, when it comes to crafting, I often just give up on it. I'm either too busy or too lazy to bother finding all the recipes and materials and all of that stuff. For some reason, I didn't feel like that in New World, and I actually enjoyed running around leveling up my crafting abilities a lot. I found myself lured in by the high level mats that are actually dotted around even the beginner areas, and found that I actually wanted to take the time to be able to harvest them. This may be to do with the fact that materials seem to be everywhere in the world and it's a little bit more easy to get them. It's not so much of a chore to hunt them all down. Some people of course like that challenge, so this is only my opinion. The character or mob designs are pretty cool looking, if lacking in a little diversity. I mainly fought pigs, wolves and zombie fishmen or farmers of different levels in the same region that I was in, so like a level 3 pig, then a level 6 pig, then a level 9 pig. Of course it is a starter region, so I'm not saying that this is all there is by any means. I did run into some of the corrupted bosses and other mobs who look awesome by the way, and they also have this really cool effect on the world. As you get close to them, everything turns into this red and black smoke. It's awesome and really draws you into the fight and gets you focused, and it's like you're in your own little realm, just you, your companions, and the big baddies that you're trying to take out. I really enjoyed that element. The game has a number of different quest systems. Main story quests, side quests, faction quests, which there are 3 factions by the way and you have to choose one. And then there's also community board quests. It's a lot of content and it's nice being able to stack up a bunch of quests from various places before setting off to an area, because getting anywhere in this game takes a while, at least the first time. There is fast travel in the game between outposts and shrines, but it can't be used until you've first visited the place. There are also no mounts in New World, which I saw some people moaning about, but I actually love, as it encourages you to actually traverse the landscape of the world and explore instead of just rushing from area to area as quickly as you can, which is kind of how I felt in Bless Unleashed, which I spoke about in the video I made the other day. It can feel a bit of a slog running everywhere, especially if you die after running really far and didn't set a spawn point along the way, which actually happened to me a couple of times when making big journeys. But for the most part, I just took my time to do some side quests and faction quests and level my gathering classes as I travelled. And I have to say, for the first time in a long time when playing an MMO, I didn't feel like I wanted to just rush on to the next quest. I actually enjoyed taking my time. Now I'll just say a little bit about my experience with the combat. You are allowed to respec attributes up until level 20, which is nice as it allows you to try out some different builds and find how you want to play. I tried every weapon for a little while and found that the melee weapons like the spear, rapier and hatchet were far easier to use than the magical weapons and bow. I mainly leveled the fire staff and ice gauntlet, and although they are fun to use with some really cool spells like a flamethrower, an icy pillar that auto attacks enemies and a defensive spell that turns you into an invulnerable pillar of ice, I did find that I had a lot more trouble fighting basic enemies than when I used melee weapons. With the mage weapons, I could just about fight one enemy, maybe two if I really kited and healed a lot. But when I used the rapier, I could take down 3 or 4 at a time without even having to move or heal, like I could take on more. I just stood there spamming the attack button until they died. Attribute distribution does play a role too, of course, with different weapons being reliant on different attributes. For instance, the rapier uses primary dexterity but also intelligence, where the life staff uses focus. So of course, attribute distribution and the mastery points that you've chosen in your weapons do of course affect how these builds play out and the power of the weapons, but I would like to hear other people's thoughts on the weapon balance and their favourite combinations, just out of interest, so just let me know it down in the comments below. Did you feel it was balanced or unbalanced? In terms of PvP, the game does have open world PvP that you can turn on and off in towns. If you turn it on in town and then leave, it is on until you either die or you get to another town and turn it off. You can't just turn it on and off in the world as you go. I saw some people in the chat moaning about this as well, but I think it's a fair system. Open world PvP can be abused so easily without rules like these, so I'm glad to see them in place already. There's also big 50v50 battles called wars which seem to be happening quite a lot, though they are on a schedule and you can sign up for them at the war board. I did sign up for one war, but as I was a low level, I wasn't chosen and I was put in reserve. I understood why, because why take a level 15 when you could have a level 38? But I was a bit disappointed because the war was in the starter area and it would have been nice to take part in that as a starter player. But I'll just have to wait and level up. There are also other PvP modes, including control points which are spread around the map in places like forts that you can defend and attack, and a mode called Outpost Rush, which is an endgame 20v20 battle where teams must coordinate and balance their time, gathering resources, building up their outposts, capturing objectives and defeating enemy players. Level 60 players can jump into Outpost Rush solo or as a group of up to 5 players. Lastly, I just want to show you a graphical comparison. I don't usually do this in my videos, but I thought I'd give it a go. I recorded all of this gameplay on my old system with a GTX 1060. It's a factory overclocked 6GB card. Obviously this card is pretty out of date at this point, but I wanted to see if it could handle it. At 1080 res, I was getting about 55 to 60 frames per second on low, and between 25 to 30 frames per second on very high. A super high frame rate isn't really needed for an MMO in my opinion, and I found it very playable. At 1440 resolution, on low I was getting around 40 frames per second, and on very high I was getting around 25 frames per second. I've done some little comparisons here for you to see what the different looks are like and, see if you can see any lag and popping textures or anything as you're playing. Considering this is a 1060, I think the game actually looks pretty good, even on low. And when I was playing, I didn't really notice any frame lag, maybe 1 or 2 drops here and there, but nothing that really ever caused me any trouble. Of course, bear in mind that I was actually recording all of this gameplay at the same time on the same system, so a lot of the resources were also going to that, so if you do have this card or a similar card, you may actually be able to get a little bit more out of it than I did. Overall, I have to say that I was really surprised with New World. I'd lost hope in this game after some of the news I'd heard, but I actually went as far as cancelling my pre-order, but now I really believe I was wrong to do this and I'm definitely going to buy it again. It's been a really long time since I've enjoyed an MMO like this. Amazon have gotten a lot of complaints for the delays with New World, but I really think that they've done the right thing and they've listened, and they've really tried to do the best that they can do at this point in time. No, it's not perfect, but no game is perfect, and I really do think that this is going to be a game worth playing. People are saying that Amazon are using it as a testing ground, and even if that is true, I'm fine with that. It really seems as though they're trying to put in a lot of effort and really get things right. The MMO genre really needs a title to be a success, with so many of the recent ones just being complete and utter disappointments. I do hope that this is the title that does that and maybe brings back some of the old faith that people had in the genre. and maybe it might even start making some other companies make some more MMOs. Who knows? Like I say, the game is by no means perfect, but is a hell of a lot of fun, with some really great concepts, and most importantly, it's a step in the right direction for MMOs as a whole. That's all from me on this one. See you in the next one.